Hello and welcome to Autistic Booktube. I'm your host, Tim, an autistic person and writer, and today we're talking about a few things. One, why start a booktube channel that's focused on autism? Well, there are a few reasons. One is personal. I actually have a lot of trouble maintaining a reading habit despite multiple graduate level degrees in literature and creative writing. The nature of my brand of autism is rumination and overthinking, and the decision fatigue really gets to me. So it helps to have a framework for what I am reading now, but also what I'll be reading in the future, because otherwise I'll never choose anything. I'll never choose anything. I will just sit there and stagnate. And so instead of stagnation, I'm going to be the outist, getting in touch with autistic culture and autistic history, and it's good. I love it. So two, I think autism is not nearly visible enough across the literary landscape. As more and more people discover they're autistic, which is happening, a larger and larger community is emerging that's hungry for stories that reflect back at them their identity and their diversity. So I think it's worth mulling over what autism's place is in the literary world. It's good to compile a list of autistic writing and autistic authors that people can go to and check out and enjoy. And so in the spirit of that, I hope to do reviews and spotlights and a lot of lists because I love making lists. But I also want to talk a little about what it's like trying to make it as a writer with moderate support needs. A person diagnosed at level 3, actually, when I was in my 30s. I'll also be talking about some other things I like poetry, specifically Instagram poetry, which I write and which I love, and which I think is sort of the domain now of neurodivergent writers in a way, so I think it's really interesting. I'll occasionally look at other media too, like movies and TV, which I enjoy. Maybe the odd nonfiction title here and there. There are some very good memoirs about autism that I think are worth, digging into. And ideally, I'll try to get a lot of stuff on here and share a lot of stuff that maybe you haven't heard about before. That's my goal. Okay, so second thing we're talking about today, a list of autistic books that I'm excited to read that I haven't yet. And I'm gonna do 5. They're all fiction. Most are novels, but not all of them. And specifically, we're talking fiction written by actually autistic authors. So it doesn't matter if the characters or the stories themselves or the structures or anything like that are explicitly autistic or implicitly autistic or neither. I don't care. That's not important to me. And so without further ado, let's get into the list. All right, so number 1 is Matt Haig's The Life Impossible. Now, I'm interested in this novel because I'm interested in Matt Haig's Instagram account, which I think is excellent, especially since his autism diagnosis a few years ago. He's been posting these single images with really, earnest, raw, vulnerable, sincere captions underneath, and I think they're really artful and really amazing. I really love them. And the truth is, I've never actually read any of Matt Haig's books. I'm always really interested in the premise of whatever project he's working on, but then I read, a couple pages or some excerpts, and they don't really resonate with me. They feel a little stiff or something. So I was interested in the idea of the comfort book, but then I read a few passages and it just didn't really strike me. And then of course the Midnight Library. When I first heard about that novel, I sort of spiraled. Kind of a writer thing happened to me where I thought, oh man, this is such a great idea. How can I write something similar that kind of echoes what he's doing, but that's totally my own? I was really pumped about that book, but then I read a couple pages and it just didn't really work for me. I just couldn't connect with it. And I think on some level, actually, Matt Haig feels the same. If you look at how he talks about the Midnight Library, for example, he's obviously very appreciative of all that book has done for him. and he can acknowledge how much it means to a lot of people. But he also talks about it as like the book he wishes he could have revised more, or maybe it was not the book he wanted to write, or he was writing towards expectations. And so all of that is to say, The Life of Impossible seems to be the book that he wanted to write for himself. It's the stranger book. He says some weird stuff happens in it. I think it's the book that was in his heart, and because that's the case, I'm just really interested in what he's come up with. I really want to see what he's put together. And so I think probably a lot of you already know about this book. It's come out very recently. It's about a retired teacher who has left a house in the Mediterranean, and she goes there. She's kind of unsure of what's what. She kind of discovers the truth to some mysteries. It's very much about wonder and rebirth and hope and recovery. Probably an upmarket title, general fiction with maybe a little more literary flair than what you typically might find in a Matt Haig book. But anyway, I'm definitely going to get to this one at some point. Okay, number 2 is Viktoria Lloyd-Barlow's All the Little Bird Hearts, another British author. A lot of these authors are British, but I gotta be honest, it's the title here. Maybe it's played out or overdone to put birds in the title, but I like it. Also, I like that the main character is named after a day of the week, Sunday. I love playful names. I love play with names. She lives with her teenage daughter. She has very rigid routines. She's eccentric. She only eats white foods on certain days, goes the marketing copy. I'm not sure if she's explicitly autistic or just coded that way, but it seems very, very clear and very relatable. The plot, I don't know a ton about this one, but the plot revolves around that trope of the disarming, striking neighbor who moves in next door or down the street and kind of shakes things up, well-worn narrative territory, but I'm into it. I actually heard about this book through Autistic Book Club on Instagram, and I think they were really positive, and so I'm feeling very positive as well. I cannot wait to start this one. All the Little Bird Hearts. Number 3 is Nisha Dolan's The Happy Couple. I don't imagine that they're actually happy. But look, I really liked Exciting Times, and I really like Nisha Dolan in general, and I like stories at the intersection of queerness and autism, because that's the intersection where I live. But one of the things I like most about Dolan's writing, first, her prose is beautiful, unmatched, arguably. But I really like that she handles relationships in nuanced and complex fashion. She writes conflict in such a way that neither person is right or wrong, and that's actually really rare, I think, in my opinion. So no cartoons, no caricatures, and that's what I expect here, definitely. This one is about the period leading up to the wedding between Luke, serial cheater, and Celine, who's more interested, quote, in piano than real life. Relatable. But there are some other characters too, some more tangential characters that whose minds we enter, looks like. And there's a short timeline here. I like when the scope is truncated instead of longer timelines, and you can really dig into moments and scenes and dialogues and take everything in, because for me, that's basically what autism is just taking everything in. It's just constantly the too muchness. It's just noticing every detail and really inhabiting the space. I like that about how Exciting Times worked, and I imagine I'll like it here as well. Also, this thing has a great cover. Number 4, Madeline Ryan, A Room Called Earth, a novel. And Madeline Ryan, an Australian author who wrote an opinion piece, if I recall, for the New York Times about why your autistic child is awesome. This is her first book. And I actually read part of this and loved it, and I stopped reading it. I don't know why. ADHD, I guess, but the structure is so interesting. It's about this woman who spends a lot of the first chapters getting ready for a party. She's at home, and then in the middle she goes to the party, and then at the towards the end of the book she meets a person and they have a meaningful night together. It's a short scope. It's like 24 hours. I just love this idea, and I love this character, and the prose again is just so good and so clever, and so smart. This character is constantly noticing small details and branching out in this really poetic way into associations and stories she has that are related to the things that she notices. She has a cat. It's awesome. But yeah, Meline Ryan was diagnosed with autism while she was writing this book. That must be interesting, I think, to be writing something and then be diagnosed and realize, oh, that maybe that can explain a lot of the choices I've made as a writer. But yeah, I'm really excited to get back into this novel. I read about 70% of it, and then, like I said, I don't know, got distracted, I guess, with other things. But I read at some point, I'm not sure where this is now, but she was writing the film adaptation for this novel, and I'd love to see that if it's ever produced, because I'm just curious how it could work, because like the first 16 or however many chapters of the book, it's just a person in their room thinking about stuff. Like, how do you visualize that? I would really love to see how it's done. Feels like Before Sunrise or something, but neurodivergent style. Okay, and finally, Bugsy by Raphael Frumkin, a collection of stories. This is from an autistic trans writer, an American, the only American on the list, I guess, but kind of upmarket with some literary influence to it. I have this book already, and I read the one story in it that has an explicitly autistic character. I learned about the book through Electric Literature, who published an essay by Frumpkin about how we read and explore the experiences that aren't quite our own, how we write each other. He was basically calling for more joy in more autistic voices and less gatekeeping, and it's a really complex theoretical essay. I really recommend it. His fiction is more accessible, but yeah, there was some controversy to this, I guess, because the story I mentioned is about a non-speaking autist, and Frumpkin is not non-speaking. I don't know all the details of the criticisms that was directed towards this book, but I feel like maybe it was a little misguided, and maybe the story has been misrepresented to some extent, because I felt that it was a really compelling look, not just at one gifted non-speaking autistic person, but also at his, in my opinion, clearly undiagnosed autistic mother. It's about both of them. And so maybe the scope of the story is much broader and much wider than what the criticism might suggest. The point of the story as I read it was that none of us are getting the support we need. A lot of the frameworks we have for understanding support needs for, high masking individuals or low masking, or people perceived as profound autism versus high functioning, or whatever label, none of them are useful. The frameworks fail. And if you're autistic, you're not getting the help you need. That's it, period. So I found the story very moving and touching and sad, and so I really look forward to the other stories in the book, because I think they're probably equally moving and touching and sad. One involves gaming and streaming, and I love gaming and streamers, and I think some of the other ones are supposed to be very sexy, and obviously sex is a very good and positive thing. But yeah, Bugsy, I think not as many people know about this book, and I think it probably deserves more attention than what than what it got. It came out this year, 2024. And so that's it for today. Tell me in the comments, have you read these? What would you recommend? What else should I read? What am I missing? Please subscribe and like and all of those helpful things. I'm really simultaneously daunted by and happy about this project. It's a major challenge for me. The focus, using my voice, articulating, my mind is often very disorganized, but I want to learn to do it well. And I hope you'll join me as I try to do that. Like I said, I have lots of ideas for book lists and craft talks and stuff about daily life and writing life, and I hope you'll stick around. And then for today, thank you for being here. If you made it this far, thank you. I really appreciate it. All best to you, and I'll see you next time.